Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Haskincast podcast. I have a great show for you today. My dear friend Abby Stroot came by to talk to us about being a seamstress, working with Cirque du Soleil in the wardrobe department, opening up her own shop, Pincushion, and some of her designs and things that she's created. She is just one of the most bubbly, warm, wonderful people that I know. She's the kind of person that, like, 5 seconds after you meet her, you just want to give her a big hug because she's so fun. She took some time out of her incredibly busy schedule to talk to me, and I greatly appreciate that. And very excited to bring that to you guys as well. As far as show notes goes, there's really not a whole lot this week. Did a special episode last Saturday going over my Mental Sauna 3 Christmas Inflections album. This week, if all goes well, I will have another special Saturday episode talking about my first Haunted Holidays Deadly Christmas album and going over the songs. I don't know. I don't know if you guys like that, but for me, I love to know the in-depth side of it from the artist's perspective. I like to listen to it first, get to know it, and then I want to know why they created it or why they did this or why they did that. And I just find it fascinating. Maybe it's because I'm a composer that I feel that way, but I think that a lot of people like behind-the-scenes kind of stuff. So hopefully that's something that you guys are enjoying and will continue to enjoy as I bring those on. Hoping to do those for all the albums and books at some point as I have time. I've got a couple of composing projects coming up. So after I do the 2 for the 2 Haunted Holidays albums, then I might wait until next year to do any more. Plus, everyone's getting busy with Christmas and all that. And I would imagine most people have their houses, the decorating's coming along, if not completed already. I know a lot of people do that on Thanksgiving. So anyway, whenever you want to listen to those, you can. They're not going anywhere. Thankfully, Podbean allows me unlimited hosting, so I can post as much as I want and not have to worry about it being taken down for space limitations, which I greatly appreciate. In fact, thanks Podbean for hosting the podcast, even though I paid for it. So there you have it. So this episode has Abby Stroot, and let's talk to Abby. Let's welcome Abby to the show. Abby, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. I'm so excited to have you on.
I'm so excited to be on the show.
Yay! I have a few things I want to talk to you about, obviously, which is why I had you on. Well, first of all, let's talk about your shop. You have Pincushion, which is that considered downtown Las Vegas, the area that you're at?
Yes. So technically, we are in the Arts District. We're kind of smack dab in the middle of it. We're like corner of Charleston and Main, so we're right by the Antique Alley, and then also right by Arts Factory, Art Square. So we're kind of right in the middle of all the good stuff. And
conveniently a short walk to Cockroach Theater.
Exactly.
Probably the best place you could have opened up, because you're also a short walk from the Majestic Repertory too.
Yep, and it's actually really nice to be so close to those spaces. Just with my background and having done a lot of shows with those two different groups, it's kind of nice to be closer. Just be right there.
Yeah. Is that why you picked that location, or did that just happen to be where you were able to find a space?
I knew I wanted to be in the Arts District. It was just something I had my heart set on, and I knew that was where I needed to go, just with what we do in the space. It's a creative co-working space, and we needed to be somewhere close to where the creative minds are. So, there's a couple of theaters there, and then with Arts Factory, all the different art galleries, and then there's the yoga studios. There's just a lot of creative energy in that area of town. It's definitely up and coming, and there's so many new things coming in, and it's just I've definitely got in at just the right time.
Yeah, and it's a lovely space too. It's very warm and inviting, and a place where I think I would feel comfortable going in and wanting to learn something and not feeling like it's this pretentious, uptight place where I should just not talk because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Oh, we talk about everything. We try to keep it. We try to keep it very. I mean, the costume shops and sewing spaces that I grew up in or grew up working in, it was always a comfortable space. Came in, you worked, but you talked to people, and you could talk about current events, or you could, gossip about shows or anything like that. And it was just comfortable. It didn't feel like, oh, I'm going into work, kind of this schlump feel.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely with our space, we got really lucky that it has this beautiful skylight, so it makes it really nice to work by daylight and not feel kind of trapped in a cement building with, what do they call those? Fluorescents? That's what it is. Word.
It is very light and airy in there. I just, the few times that I visited you down there, it just feels like a place that you just want to hang out.
Yep. It is. It's very comfortable.
And so you guys do a variety of classes. What are the main things that you focus on at this point? And I know you're always developing new classes. So at the time of this podcast coming out, where are you at, and where are you looking to go class-wise?
Right now, so our most popular classes right now is sort of classes. We have sewing basics, which is kind of for the beginner. We have a lot of people that come in and say, like, hey, I inherited my grandmother or my mother's sewing machine, and I've always wanted to learn, like, can you just teach me how to use it? So we do that, which is usually pretty effective. Just kind of, it teaches the basics, teaches you this learning the knobs and all the switches on your machine, and then just some basic stitches that you can use just in everyday things. And then kind of as like almost an add-on to that, or kind of not different, but kind of another idea in that scope is we offer one-on-one classes. They're a little bit more expensive, but it offers a chance if there's something specific you want to know. So say you just want to know how to put a zipper into pants, or I just want to know, we had one of our students came in and wanted to know how to replicate one of her favorite shirts, because the one she had was old and she loved it so much and didn't want to get rid of it, and the company doesn't make it anymore. And so we taught her how to make a pattern out of her current existing clothes, and then use that to make kind of replicas. So that's a little bit more of a one-on-one if you're looking for something specific to work on. And then kind of our second most popular class right now is our pattern of the month. And it was kind of an idea I came up with just to kind of, as a skill building thing. So we have a lot of people who say, well, I already know how to sew, but I want to learn more. Like, where do I go from here? So I kind of came up with this idea of picking out different patterns, and not patterns that are available at Joann's. A lot of these are kind of independent companies, and they're very specialized. The people who make the patterns are people, so random, but I've become Instagram friends with them, so I'll send them messages all the time of like, hey, when's your next pattern's coming out, kind of stuff. And so it's almost like a tangible person. So like they've made these clothes. I can trust their instructions because I know that they made this first. So what I would do is I pick out a pattern that is a skill builder. So for example, our first month of doing it, I picked out this simple dress, and the whole idea of it is to practice working with stretchy materials, because there's a lot of different techniques you use for that, which it went really well. We had a couple of students, and what we do at the class is we meet 4 days or every week in the month. So we meet, every Saturday. Previously, we've done every Saturday and every Tuesday. For December, we'll be doing Saturday and Thursday, because with the holidays, it eats up a little bit of the month.
Sure.
But yeah, so we basically what it is we get together, we figure out measurements, we go over how much yardage do you need of fabric, and what are some good places to buy fabric, and then we cut out the pattern pieces and then we put it together. And the nice part about it is that it gives, with it being a group and we're all doing it at the same time, everybody kind of runs into the same issues at the same time. So if you have questions, you can kind of ask your neighbor, or they can ask me, or we kind of troubleshoot different things as we go, which I think is a big part of learning to sew, is that you kind of need to trial and error a little bit. And sometimes it's hard to do that off of like YouTube videos. We have a lot of people who say, I try to watch YouTube videos, but I need somebody to kind of show me that I'm doing it right or that I'm doing it wrong. So that's kind of the nice part of the pattern of the month. And it seems to be kind of a hit a little bit. We're just trying to find different stuff that appeals to people. And then after the pattern of the month, I always end up carrying those patterns in the shop. So like right now we have a couple patterns, and we're the only people in Nevada that carry them.
Wow.
Which is kind of a cool thing. I mean, the side note to that is that people can buy it online.
Right,
but we're the only place that has right? You can buy anything online now.
Exactly.
But we are one of the only stores that carries, these couple of patterns in like a physical location in Nevada, I guess. So.
Right. I'm curious, do you find that people, I mean, obviously on YouTube, you can only follow what the tutorial is, but do you find that at first people are a little timid to experiment? They really kind of just want to do something right the first time, and then it takes them a little while to say, maybe I'll give this a shot, or are people generally kind of just go for it?
I think a little bit of both. The number one question we get from people is, well, how long before I become really, like a really good sewer, which isn't the right word for that, but it's the perfect word. And I always tell people, I'm like, it just depends on, it's like any other skill. You just have to work at it. If you're willing to put in the time to just kind of play with stuff and just experiment, then you get better. You kind of learn from your mistakes and you trial and error. I think the thing that's scary for people is that it's a machine. It's a machine with a sharp needle in it. So, of course, like, it's a little intimidating.
Yeah, a
But
little
most
bit,
of the time, you can't actually sew your finger. I've only heard a few situations where that's happened.
Right.
But I think just it being a machine, and I always tell people it's like a car. You always kind of want to start with a Honda and then you move up into the Porsche. Like you start with a simple home machine,
right? Yeah.
Learn your basic stitches and kind of get used to it. And it always just takes, like, I always kind of suggest to people starting out, I said, just pick a simple project, making a grocery bag, or sometimes in our beginning classes we'll have them make coasters. All it is just a simple straight stitch around, but it gets you practicing, getting a feel for the machine, practicing with fabrics and different techniques. And so it's kind of I think it's intimidating for sure for people, but it is one of those things that I always tell them, like, you just have to try it. Like, you're never going to know, and you won't go up any further if you don't just give it a whirl.
Right.
So,
yeah. I mean, it's interesting how often and how many different situations I hear that question come up when people say, how long will it take me to be successful in the music business, or how long before I'll get a really good film to work on, or how long before I get a big role as an actor? The biggest variable is you.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you expect me to predict that for you when it's, just sit in your chair and it's going to be 7 days?
Right. Exactly. Somebody will just drop a job on your front doorstep. It's amazing how that happens.
It just baffles me that, and maybe they don't know the right question to ask, but it just seems to me that it's such a strange question when the answer is really up to them. Especially when it comes to, like, a skill set. We're not just born amazing composers or amazing seamstresses. Like, you kind of have to, if you like it, then you just kind of have to keep going with it. Or really good
that's
sewers.
The other thing I tell people. Sewers, exactly, really good sewers. It's kind of one of those things of, like, I always kind of tell people, like, if you don't like sewing, then don't do it, because it's just going to get worse. Yeah. You're just going to get more frustrated, and it's not going to be fun anymore. Like, find a different hobby, like maybe knitting. Maybe knitting's for you. I don't know.
Well, and the great thing is that if you do need something done and it's not something that you feel comfortable doing yourself, or you're not excited about doing it yourself, I mean, there are YouTube tutorials that are you can learn a certain amount of things from there. Then the next step would be taking classes somewhere like Pincushion with someone like you, who can really be patient and I think that would be the best thing about taking a class with you is the way that you work with people, because you're very patient, you're very understanding, you answer all the questions. You're like the kind of person that I would want to instruct me in anything I ever want to do. So if I want to do something, I'm going to call you and say, okay, Abby, you need to learn this so that you can teach me whatever it is.
As long as it doesn't involve a car, I'm good. So don't ask me to do anything about a car. It's all Greek to me. I don't understand any of it. Well, I'm happy to pay somebody else for that.
And that's the point. If you don't want to learn something, if you're not comfortable with something, there are places that you can go for just about any service that you could possibly want. So your shop, Pincushion, isn't just about classes. You also take on all kinds of jobs, everything from a simple alteration to full costuming, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we do. So we offer alterations, and then we just kind of call it custom orders. So we've had a variety of costume requests to we've done quite a bit of patio chair covers, like that kind of thing. It's kind of nice, like those types of things. If you're willing to invest in it, it's nice because you make it your own. A lot of times with our clients, I do a lot of research on finding just the right fabric, and I will send. I probably am fairly annoying to people in emails, but I, send 10 links of like, hey, these are some fabrics I think you might be interested in. Let me know what you like, and I can go ahead and get stuff ordered, everything like that.
I would think they would appreciate that kind of depth of service. I mean, you're not just saying, hey, here's a website, go check them out. You're looking for this or this kind of fabric. You're actually going in and being very specific and giving them specific choices that you've already pre-screened. Most people don't take that kind of time.
It's true, and I've actually become a little bit notorious for being able to find things online. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we have had a couple of clients that are like, you're the best at picking out fabrics. You know exactly what color I need. And I don't know if it's just because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist in that, of like, I don't want to pick just anything. It's got to be the right thing.
Right, yeah. Well, I think it's a combination of that and your experience, because you're not new to this game at all.
Exactly.
The shop is fairly new, but you've been doing this for a while.
Well, yeah.
In fact, you and I met working on a play that was directed by our friend Kate St. Pierre, Ephigenia, which was a Greek play. And we had these beautiful costumes and these wonderful masks that you designed, incidentally, for everyone but me, because I was not an actor in the play. I was just
you were not actually in the show.
I was and I wasn't, because I was a traveling sound guy. Like, I had to move with the show to provide the audio. It was a really unique thing, but that's typical of Kate. But she's very adventurous, and I love that about her. Once you can get on the same page and understand where she's going with it, then you can go, okay. But you usually spend the first day going, I have no idea how that's going to work.
Right?
Yeah.
You just you have to trust it, kind of go, yeah. I don't know how your brain's doing it, but let's do it.
But you just have to jump in because you want to do something great for her. She's very inspiring that way.
Oh, amazing. Amazing to work with.
Yes. And you did a great job with those costumes, and that was how you and I met. And then we reconnected this summer when we worked on Still Dance the Stars together, and you did a wonderful, amazingly creative job on the costumes for that. Unbelievable, because it's such a almost ethereal concept where you really got a basic idea of what they wanted, and then you really had to create it from scratch.
Yeah, it was definitely different, and I love Marcus to death. I would do anything for that man, and it was definitely funny because show opened and I called him and I was just like, I feel terrible because it was such for me it was such an interesting time because I just opened the shop, and so I was still kind of the new kid on the block. I didn't have a lot going on. And Marcus came to me with the show, and I was like, yeah, this sounds amazing. We could do all these cool things with it. And then fortunately enough, like the shop picked up and we had a bunch of projects. And at the time, it was just me doing pretty much running the whole thing. And that, you know, you just lose track of everything else.
Sure.
Which I just felt terrible for. But somehow, like, Marcus was just like, you got this. It's going to be great. And we put it, you know, came up with this great show. And it's such an interesting concept with that play of, you know, we had to kind of decide, okay, well, we have these, you know, these toys that are in the show, and we have to make costumes. Like, we have to make these real people look exactly like the toys. Do we make the people's costumes and then get the toy, or do we get the toy and base it off of the costume? It was, you know, you kind of have to make those crazy decisions. And so we found toys and then somehow magically made outfits on people.
And the toys couldn't have been more perfect. We had in the play one person who in the fantasy world, or in the dream world, I guess it would be, was a potato. And when we got the box, wondering
which one you were going to pick.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could have picked any of them, but when we got the box of toys at one night at rehearsal and we were looking at them, I couldn't have imagined anybody could have found a more... I wouldn't have thought that there was a potato puppet in the first place. But this thing was just so perfect. And then the costume, of course, matched all the puppets beautifully. But you're given something like a character called a Thingus. Where do you even start with that? I mean, that could be anything.
I wish somebody else had been in on the emails. So Stacia was our props designer. And so the emails between her, Marcus, and myself on trying to pick a Thingus was just hilarious, because it was just the amount of options just ranged. Like, do we go from, you know, this looks like a toy that was rejected from the factory because its eyeball was stitched on in the weird place, or do we go with, you know, sort of a relatable character? I think in my head I thought of Monsters Inc. Or not Monsters Inc. What's that? Oh, Real Monsters. Do you remember that show?
Yeah.
They like lived in the sewer or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
I don't know.
It's been a while.
But that's where I was thinking of. And then we came up with this character, which ironically is like a real toy, like that they sell right now. Like, I saw it strangely enough, in like the Black Friday ads.
Really?
I was like, that's a real thing? Like, that's not just on Amazon? I don't understand.
Yeah, and of course you turned me into a spider, which I think to pick like the whitest guy in all of Vegas to be the hip hop DJ. I just joked with Marcus about casting me in that role, because originally I wasn't supposed to. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it was meant for me. But that was fun. And so Abby made me this wonderful hat that was kind of almost like dreadlocks, but also spider legs at the same time. So there was 4 on each side, and they were like a really soft material. But it was kind of like it kind of made me look a little bit hip hop DJ. And then you did for the shirt, you cut out holes in it to give me the appearance of spider webs. And it was a black shirt, and then I wore a white shirt underneath so that would really shine through. And I was so in love with that costume, I couldn't wait to put it on.
Yeah, it was such a fun. Well, and you and I had bounced around with different ideas, and it started in the extreme, and then we kind of ended with a little bit of like a reggae DJ type look. But it was fun. I mean, yeah. Even though like your character, did you? I don't even remember. Did you have lines? I don't know if you had lines.
I did not say one word and I was on stage. I'm present the entire
play. You were on
play.
Stage the whole time. Not one word.
I walk in and start the play, and I'm the last one to leave the stage, and I did not say one word the entire time. I'm just present.
That's the best. You were, off book probably.
Oh yeah, I never misdelivered a line. I will say that.
Right.
Kate said, was it Kate or I think Dina Emerson from Miss Dare had said something really interesting. They said, I may not have interacted a lot, or I may not have said anything, but I was a big presence on the stage, which I thought was interesting.
It's true, you were.
I thought I was just rather inconspicuous and forgotten unless there was action in my direction, but apparently not. Apparently people would like look up to see what I was doing from time to time, and I'm like, I'm doing nothing, but I hope it was worth it, you know?
You're like, I'm just killing it up here.
Yeah,
well, I think for that character, it was such a connection between at least for the play, a connection between reality and this surreality. That's not also a word. Look at me come up with, I'm like a walking dictionary today.
But that's no different from me in real life anyway, so.
Right.
And now for anyone who wants to check out the puppets and the costumes on my Facebook page, my regular Facebook page, I have a Still Dance the Stars album with some scenes that we were taking pictures of during our dress rehearsal, and then some that we're actually taking during the play, and then I've got pictures of all the puppets, and so I think I've represented all the costumes and all the puppets on that page. So take a look; they're a lot of fun. And I can only imagine that email chain for designing the Thingus puppet. That must have been a blast. Now, previous to that, you worked with Cirque du Soleil in the costume department on both Zarkana, which unfortunately closed fairly early. I think it was here maybe a year or so, and it had closed. And then, then you moved on to Love.
It was 4 years, actually.
Was it 4 years?
Or we had just celebrated, because it started. It opened in 2012.
Wow.
Maybe. I don't know. I know I was there at least 3 years.
I did not realize it had been that long. It just went by so fast.
Right? Yeah. Very sad.
I'm glad I got to see it, though, because it was a wonderful show. It was a lot more classic, more street performer, because it was one of the older shows.
Yes.
And it wasn't really designed for the theater because it had been a touring show. So whereas now they do a lot of things that they can't do on the road because they've got permanent theaters to work with. But Zarkana was kind of like the blend between the two. What was it like working? What was your actual title? Was it costumer?
So my actual title was wardrobe attendant. Yep. So doing all the backstage quick changes and whatnot.
Yeah, that's got to be intense because your timing has to be there all the time.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, a lot of my background is in doing wardrobe. Actually, my first big theater job out of high school was being on a wardrobe crew in my hometown, and so it's so weird. This is going to sound more inappropriate than it probably should, but it's weird to be really good at helping people change clothes. That sounds terrible. Like I used to, one of the productions I did. Okay, backstory. Let me rewind here. So I worked for Music Theater Wichita. That was my first big theater I worked for after high school. And I started as an intern, and then actually originally started as an apprentice, like a high school volunteer. And then I started as an intern, and then the next year moved up to assistant. And then that very next year, I actually got promoted to head of wardrobe. And weirdly enough, one of the shows we did was Annie, and my performer that I was in charge of was Daddy Warbucks. And I was so proud of myself because this man was like 6 feet tall. And for your listeners, I'm like 5'2", 5'3". I'm no giant by any means. And Daddy Warbucks and I managed to change him out of a 3-piece suit into a full tuxedo in 30 seconds or less.
Wow. That's crazy.
Which is incredible.
Yeah.
So, and it's so weird and it's as a wardrobe person, you look at how you put on clothes differently. Just because of, you have to figure out, okay, what goes first and what's the last thing I put on, and do I need to put socks before I do pants, or do I have pants and then socks, and then, just trying to figure out, like, how can I do this the fastest?
Right. I don't think I can even change from, like, jeans into sweats in 30 seconds. That's impressive.
Right? There are some days where it takes me an hour just to take off my shoes.
Yeah.
But I love it. It's such a weird adrenaline rush, because you as a wardrobe person, you've got your whole quick change set up, and you're waiting for the performer to come running off stage, and rip this. It sounds so dirty. I should really find a different way to describe this. It doesn't sound so bad. But you're like ripping their clothes off as they're running off stage.
For some reason, every one of my episodes is coming up marked as explicit, even though I put that it's not explicit. So you're covered.
No.
You can say whatever you want.
Just get so excited.
I would imagine, though, that that's pretty intense to do that in 30 seconds. Is it usually easier with male characters? Can you do things that are in certain layers that maybe are less intricate than a lot of the female costumes?
Not necessarily. A lot of times, it kind of depends on the outfit, really, because a lot of times you can, we call it like, presetting things in. So like if you have, say the guy's wearing a vest, or changing his button-down shirt, his vest, and his jacket. So you just stack them all in at one time. Mm. So like when they come off stage, they just put their arms out and you put shirt, vest, and jacket all on at the same time. And sometimes women's wear is a little bit easier because, the term is to puddle. You can puddle their clothes on the floor, and like with a dress, they just step in, and then you pull it up and zip.
Okay.
So it just kind of depends on the outfit. Sometimes it can, and then sometimes it can go really well, and sometimes it can be chaos. Because especially for performers, they're coming off in the heat of the moment. They just had this scene on stage, and they have to check out and do a quick change, and so sometimes you do get smacked in the face or a knee to the eye. It's fine.
Sure.
Totally fine.
Is there anything with either men or women that, like, if someone were putting a show together and trying to think in terms of costuming where they might have some really tight times, is there anything that you would say would be a good idea to try and avoid because of that speed that you need?
Probably one of the hardest things I've ever run into as a wardrobe person is large group changes. Mm-hmm. Like a couple of shows that we did, like Les Mis or what was another big one? Or Singing in the Rain, where you've got all 20 chorus members changing at the exact same time, which is a little crazy to think about. And a lot of times, with certain productions, you're kind of fitting into the theater that you're in. You don't really have a chance to kind of build the theater around what you need. Mm-hmm. And so with a lot of quick changes like that, you just kind of shimmy into spaces where you can fit. And and you're backstage in the dark, so you hope that everybody sees all the accessories they're supposed to put on, or, you're trying to put on wigs while they're putting their clothes on, and it can be a little chaotic. So sometimes it's kind of important to think about those types of things if you're putting together a production is, okay, what's going to be a lot, and a lot of it comes from when you're putting together a production, you can't just think about what's happening on stage. You have to think about what's going to go on backstage.
Right.
With scene shifts of scenery and with the costume changes and stuff, you kind of have to think of the whole space when doing that kind of thing.
Sure, and this is one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you on the show, because I think when people see a production, and I'm no different, I used to come here as a tourist, and I would come specifically to see a different show every time. In fact, that's part of the reason I would come up 3 or 4 times a year. And you just enjoy the performance, and you don't really think about the depth of work that really goes into them. And, when you think about things like having to get somebody off and back on stage in a minute, completely different. I was just watching a video last night where they were showing singers that changed their outfit during the song. And some of it was lighting technique, so it was kind of cheating a little bit. But some of them they would have, if it's a female who's singing, she would have the 4 men that are dancing with her just tear out the outfit, and then she would have another one on underneath. And things like that. And I'm like, but what about the backstage stuff? So that's really interesting that you shared those stories, because I was just thinking about that last night.
Yes, and it's funny that you say that that when you like come to see shows, like you just watch the performance, because now for me, having had all of my background is in backstage, I can't necessarily enjoy a performance like that. Mm-hmm. That I sit and I think about, oh, what's going on backstage? Like, oh, how did they do that quick change? Or like, oh, that scenery shift is going a little weird. Or, you know, you can kind of,
right.
It's bad because I can see things. I'm like, oh, that cue is a little late, like kind of things, you know, and I'm not any part of the production, but I, you know, just see things and I'm like, oh,
sure,
interesting.
That's where I'm at now. When I first started coming up here, I think the first time I came up here was 2000. I think it was late in the year 2000. And so that was when everything was like really fresh. And I had done a little bit of theater back in school, but I didn't really have a lot of exposure to it. But now, of course, having been part of so many of the productions and working on various projects, I really spend more time now. As much as I would like to just sit down and enjoy the show, I tend to be looking at it from a technical or even a music standpoint. Where I'm like, okay, well that drummer started a little early, or they're a little off sync. I bet one of their ear monitors is out or something. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it does. When you're in the business, it does get a little hard to disconnect from being in the business.
Yep, it's a sad but true statement.
It is. And then so after you worked on Zarkana, then you went over to Love. What's like, how different is it going from one show to another where your job is basically the same, but the production is completely different?
I think it's really just that it's, you know, it's adjusting to a whole new, it's a whole new crew, it's a whole new cast, it's a whole new backstage to learn. The biggest difference for me between Zarkana and Love was that Zarkana we didn't have a lot of, I didn't call them quick changes. I like to call them swift changes, as in like, you've got 5 minutes, but like, you can't just like sit and chit chat for 5 minutes. You have to actually, change clothes. Mm-hmm. And so moving to Love, they actually had quite a few real like quick changes. So that was kind of nice to like, get back in the action kind of a thing. And you spend the first month of it trying to figure out where you are backstage, because although the theater is in the round, backstage is in a horseshoe. Oh. And so you're kind of trying to figure out, okay, so if I am, you have to get your directions right, but, when you're trying to figure out north and south, but you're inside in a cement building, so you don't have any kind of sky guide.
Right.
So there's all these signs everywhere, and you've got mostly people telling you like, no, you're going the wrong way, kind of a thing. But that's probably the biggest change.
That show is incredibly busy too. It's not an excessively huge cast, but it seems like it because there are so many different costumes. It seems like there's a lot of people in that show, more so than you can tell at the end when they come out to take their bow. Is my perception right on that?
Yeah, I would say every performer has at least 3 different looks that they wear during the show. And they pretty much wear them every show. There with a few exceptions of, people being rotated or anything like that. But yeah, it's quite incredible. The amount of costumes in that show is crazy, and just the team that goes into it to maintenance it and to keep that ship running is incredible.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because it's not just that even, it's that they're very active. There's a lot of dancing, a lot of movement, there's not a lot of standing still. It would seem like those outfits would wear out fairly quickly, and the maintenance would be a huge part of that. Yeah,
and that's the nice thing about Cirque is that they do try to keep a lot of that in mind. They do think about, okay, so what's happening in this outfit? What type of fabric should we use that's going to last a little bit longer? What's washable, or what's an easy to wash thing that we can make so that way, it doesn't get super smelly or stained or anything like that. That it's kind of an easier care. Mm-hmm. So that is one of the very smart things that Cirque does is that they try to keep that kind of stuff in mind of, how do we make these last as long as possible before it's, it's seen, 200 shows too many kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah. So that being the case, out of curiosity, would I be wrong in thinking that Velcro type rip away clothing would be a thing in theater?
It is. It's called quick rigging, really, and there's a couple of different ways that quick rigging happens. Velcro is probably one of the top ones. There's also snaps. A lot of theaters will use some kind of snap. A lot of times you'll see on like a men's button-up shirt, the buttons will be stitched to the actual buttonholes, and then there'll be snaps underneath so that it looks like the shirt's buttoned up, but it's actually just quick rigged.
Okay.
Another couple of options is there is magnetic tape that you can also use. There are some pieces I've seen. I've done a couple productions where everything was kind of held together with magnets because she did this quick change on stage, and so she needed to be able to access it. But also, you have to think about, and in Cirque shows, it's not as much because there aren't the performers aren't necessarily wearing microphones. But in like a regular theater production, a lot of times they're wearing microphones. You don't want to be able to hear it.
Right.
You don't want to hear Velcro ripping or anything like that. So.
Sure you do. You want to know what's going on while you're trying to watch the lead.
It's such a beautiful ambience.
Well, that's where my job comes in as the audio engineer. And, when I've worked on some of these shows, is you have to know when somebody's going to come on and go off stage, and you need to know when to mute and unmute their mic. And the first thing that you do is you get the script. And then you go through the script and you see where each character comes in, where they go out, when they're talking, when they're not, and you know what mic number they're going to be, and you set up notes in the book of mic 1 on, mic 2 off, mic 3 on, and so that you have that whole cue system to follow, and then you don't hear somebody changing clothes or going to the bathroom or explaining to somebody that they can't see outside because of the smoke or whatever. Those things happen, when the engineer's not on point, because the actors should be able to trust that the engineer has turned their mic off and they shouldn't have to worry about it. But if it were me and I were going to the bathroom in the middle of a show, I probably would double check and just turn off my mic pack, but that's just me.
Right. Well, I think even sometimes then, an audio engineer who's really on top of things then freaks out because they can tell if a mic's been turned off. So they're like, "What's happening?"
Yes.
And then it's like, "Oh no, just in the restroom."
Yeah, I see those lights go on and off, and I'm like, that better come back on because in the next scene that person's going to be singing. So.
Right. Unless they're all of a sudden going to be a silent character.
Right. Now, you've not just done resident shows, you've gone out on touring shows too. How much more challenging is it to be on the road where you can't just run to your local shop that you have, a relationship with and get material or fabric or snaps? How do you deal with those kind of situations when you're out on tour? I mean,
because the tour I was on was with Sesame Street Live. Mm-hmm. So the difference in that is that the fabric and everything is very specific. So when they buy the fabric to make the costumes, they buy a ton of it, and then they send you out with this kind of collection of fabric to do what you need to do, like daily maintenance type of things, and then they have it so that if there's some kind of major repair, you can always call back to the main shop and they would send it out.
Gotcha.
And that's the thing with tour is that you do have to think ahead before you even hit the road of okay, what kind of craziness could we run into? Do we need, and we had, all kinds of different things, packed away just in case kind of situation. So that's kind of the big thing with tour is that just the road boxes for wardrobe are insane because you have to prepare for anything. Because like you said, you can't just hop in a car and run over to Joann's. Right. A lot of times some of the cities you're in don't even have a store like that. And so you kind of have to, so if you need hand needles or whatever, you better make sure you've got 100 of them before you hit the road, because you're probably going to lose at least half.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely seems like that would add another layer of challenge. So that's, I mean, obviously they know how to do this. They've got it down to a science, but that does make a lot of sense because, you probably couldn't find the specific fabric that you spent 10 hours hunting down because you needed the perfect thing.
Exactly.
I mean, I would imagine some of the more basic stuff like thread, you can always find that. There's always a Walmart. There's always something in a pinch that you can do.
Oh, yeah.
But the bigger pieces,
sure.
that would need to be too specific. Do you miss going out on the road, or was that a good experience for you?
I think that, for me, for it being my first road experience was a little hard because we were on the type of show schedule where you were only really in a city for 2, maybe 3 days.
Oh.
So you didn't really get to experience things. Like there was a couple of places where we had kind of a sit-down schedule, so we were there for a little bit longer and could actually do some fun things. And it was neat to travel to, weird places. Like I went to the original KFC, such a weird thing you don't think about, but we were in the city and there it was. And so we went and checked it out, and just random things, at least on like the show that I worked on. We just went to a bunch of kind of obscure cities, and it was, I kind of made it my own job to Google the cities we were going to before we left, to be like, okay, what can we do? What's happening?
Right. Take advantage of it.
What's within a 30-minute drive? Like, what do people want to do? So that was kind of the fun part. I don't know if I would go back. I'm kind of as I described it to somebody, like I'm kind of a settler.
Yeah.
Like having my place. Like traveling is great, but I like to be home.
Yeah, I don't even like to travel. I'm so much of a homebody. Like I don't mind going and visiting like my brother in Phoenix for 3 or 4 days. That's always fun. But I really just I like to be where I'm comfortable. I like to be where I know where everything is, and I really prefer to be working in the studio anyway. I mean, I have a couple of bucket list places to go.
Yeah.
But other than that, like I have friends that they fly to Japan or fly to Australia, and I'm like, I don't know how you do that. I'm in a plane for an hour and I want to get out.
Which is inconvenient if you're on a flight to Australia.
Oh, exactly.
You can't get out.
I mean, I don't know how drunk or how many narcotics you can take that'll just make you pass out, but I would need all of them, I think, because that's just too long. My 4.5 hour flight to Montreal was plenty.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I want to ask you, as a designer, like, when people bring you design projects to do, as a composer, I kind of struggle with we're going to keep doing it until you're happy versus I'm not going to redo this 57 times because you keep changing what you want me to do based on what I did on the last one. Do you find it difficult to draw a line with people on how many times they can change things, or are you able to really accommodate what they need fairly quickly?
That is like the $1 million question. I actually just had a conversation with about this with some friends of mine that have their own production company, and it's kind of, it's for me, because I'm very much a people pleaser. Like I want them to be happy, because when they're happy, I'm happy.
Right.
I may not have been happy in the process, but at least at the end, like everybody's excited. So it's hard for me to say no, to be like, I'm not going to change this. This is what you wanted. And so that's kind of the hard part. And it's different for me. It's different when I'm designing a show to when I'm working in the shop. Like designing the show, I will do almost anything just to make sure that the show goes up.
Right.
There have been some times that I'm like, no, you don't get that. It's just not happening. Like, I don't know where.
To an extent, part of it's going to depend on the schedule too, because if you only have X amount of time, there's only so much you can do. Or if you've got, you only allotted so much time because you've got another thing that you're working on and you're physically unable to, go to that extent. But I just, I'm kind of like you. I'm one of those people that, I just want to give you whatever you want, and I want you to walk away really happy, and I want you to come back to me next time, no matter how happy or frustrated I was with this project. But that is kind of a tough thing because you can't always just redo and redo. And for music, unless I have to buy instruments or hire performers, there's really no cost. But for you, there is, because you have to buy more fabric, you have to buy more materials, you have to buy, more grommets and different things that you might need. I don't know how often you buy a grommet. That just popped into my head, but so it's different.
I do grommets all the time.
But it's different for you because you have hard physical costs that every time they want revisions, that's more money.
It is. And actually, it's interesting because I just recently went to a sewing conference for an organization called the Association of Sewing and Design Professionals. And one of the classes I took was with, strangely enough, with a tax lawyer. And that was one of the things that he talked about, because we said, where do you draw the line? One of the examples he gave, his wife designs custom wedding dresses and, custom formals and things like that. And he says, what happens if you get to a week before they need whatever you've made for them and they've gained 30 pounds? Whose fault is that? It's not your fault that the dress doesn't fit anymore. And,
right.
You don't want to say, oh, it's your fault, you've gained 30 pounds. So he said the easiest way to cover that is doing a contract, is to say, this is, and be very, very detailed of like, this is the picture you're agreeing to, these are the details you're agreeing to, and then you're also agreeing to any changes made outside of this, other than basic alterations, oh, this needs to be taken in an inch, or, just little alterations. Anything outside of that is an extra cost. And that's something that you have to agree with your client. And you're right, like it's a little different just because, we always tell people of when you give an estimate or something, you're selling them like, this is how much the supplies will cost. If I need to order more, it's going to be more. And most of the time people get that. There are a few that are like, well, this isn't exactly what I wanted, or, and sometimes it's hard because, and I do not like sketching. I just like people to hand me a picture and say, I want this, this, and this, and this. I can go, great, I can do that. Mm-hmm. And that's the hard part, is that if you don't have a picture or something concrete, some kind of concrete evidence of what's being made, you don't have a lot of wiggle room to say like, oh, well, this is exactly what you wanted. Right. So that is kind of a hard part to run into, and that's one of the things I'm learning to be better at.
Well, it's tough because you have to be a human being, but you have to be a business person at the same time. And any of us, especially in the arts, do face that, because it's not like, if you own a convenience store. A candy bar is 95 cents or $7 or whatever they are nowadays.
$1 million.
They are. I was at our local grocery store last night, and I saw that they had some of these organic candy bars, and some of them were $7 a piece. And I thought it's not like the size of a table. It's just a little thing,
Yeah.
But those are finite costs, and they can, they shop each other and they go, okay, what is this store selling it for, and what is that store selling it for, and what's the MSRP, and then they price it accordingly. But those are finite costs. For us, almost everything is a variable.
Yeah.
And that makes it tough to really, to not, when you have a good heart and when you want to just help people and make people happy, it's really hard not to be the one that takes the hit to make your client happy. But you have to draw that line.
Yeah. And it's, such a cheesy line, but it's the first thing that comes to my head. Is like, sometimes you need to know when to hold them and when to fold them.
That's right.
Like there's some, this is what happens when I live in Vegas too long. All these like gambling references come to head.
Of course they do, yeah.
But it's true, like there's definitely there's some people that you work with that you're willing to kind of give a little bit because you want to work with them again, or that they'll come back. And then there's some people that are just too demanding, or they're just very difficult to work with. And sometimes you just have to, like you said, in a business owner kind of thing, you just have to be like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to do this until they're happy, but I know now for the future, maybe that's not somebody I want to work with. Or you learn from it. You kind of go, okay, well, now I know next time I get a project with them, I'm going to have to double the price just to cover anything that could happen kind of a thing, which sounds terrible, but you do have to cover your butt a little bit sometimes.
Sure. And sometimes you do things to earn someone's business, and sometimes you do things to make sure they never come back.
Yes. Sad but true.
Now, your gambling reference was very well timed, because that leads me into my next question. But I'm going to ask a question before my next question, so that's really not my next question now. Thinking about people who are, interested in sewing and maybe thinking about getting into that as a hobby or a profession, when they're first starting out, like you said earlier, you want to start with a simple project that's going to be, manageable. Are there certain fabrics that you would recommend that they start with, or certain fabrics you would recommend maybe that they stay away from?
The easiest fabric to work with in an early stage is a cotton. It's not shifty. It's not super heavy. It doesn't require like a really specialty needle to work with. And that's probably the best way to go. When you start getting into a lot of the fashion fabrics like satins or chiffons or even like a knit, really, you get into, needing specialty needles. You got to know the right kind of stitch length and width that you need to use, and how do you finish the edges and that kind of a thing. So cotton is really the easiest to work with, and that's what I always recommend with people. And it's really kind of the cheaper end of the fabric spectrum. That's the one thing that's really funny. We had a client of ours come in, or not a client, but one of our class attendees came in, and she goes, "Yeah, I thought that like learning how to sew would be cheaper because, they did in the olden times, and that's how they saved money, is they made their own clothes." And she goes, "And then I saw the price of fabric." And I said, "Yep, that's exactly it." I was like, it all sounds like it's cheaper until you get to the fabric store, and then it's just like, well, there went my wallet.
Sure, yeah.
But it is like, cotton is definitely like a good beginner fabric, because cotton comes in fun prints. So if you wanted to make like a little funky apron, there's all kinds of different things out there. Like, I'm obsessed with dogs, and so I always pick up like the random dog prints, but I'm never going to do anything with it, but at least they're fun. Going back to the whole spending too much money on fabric thing.
Right, yeah. So not Naga hide would probably be a bad one to start with, I would think.
Yeah.
Is it tough to work with leathers and things, like even like some of the real soft stuff?
It is. And it's kind of one of those specialty things that you really need to know what you're doing with it. Actually, funny enough, I was just working on a leather project the other day. I was redoing a purse strap. I was sitting at the machine, and it and I were having a really hard time. We were not working well together. I was just about ready to throw this like 200-pound industrial machine out the door. And I was sitting there, and I smelled something, and one of our team members was there, and I was like, "Please tell me somebody else smells this, or am I having a stroke? Because it smells like this machine is on fire." But I don't see any smoke. I don't see anything, but it smells bad. And so she came over. She's like, "Well, I kind of smell it, like nothing crazy." And so I kind of kept going, and I smelled again. I was like, "Okay, something's wrong." And what I found out was that the needle was getting super hot. I actually burned my finger on it. Wow. And so it was burning the thread.
Oh, wow.
As it was feeding through the needle, it would burn the thread. And so I was like, well, I have to get this done. I can't not get this done. So I ended up taking one of our shop fans, and I set it about a foot away from my machine. And I had it blowing directly in my face and on the needle so that it would keep the needle cool while I sewed.
Wow.
I was like, I've never looked more ridiculous in my life. But it got done.
It just goes to show, no matter how much you know, there's always something more to learn.
It is. There's always, you hit a wall, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there is a solution. Okay, got it.
Yeah, and that's the fun part, is when you find the solution. But with you saying all that, I never really thought about, other than measurements, how mathematical sewing really is.
It is. And a lot, measurement is a big part of it, but a lot of times you have to figure out, kind of an example is we did a circle skirt. So in order to figure out a circle skirt, you have to figure out what is and I call it a pie piece, but where you cut your waistband, where your waist is going to be. You have to figure out, okay, well, how much is that distance? And then how do I go from there? And And then even with sewing needles, there's a whole science to that. There's, there's two different numbers that come with a needle. And one of the numbers is determining on the thickness of the needle. And then the other one determines how sharp it is. And so it's a lot of details into that. And it can be sometimes a little brain explosive.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense. It's just not something that had really occurred to me until a few minutes ago. So that's actually pretty fascinating. Yeah. Now, before we go, the question that I was going to ask you earlier with your gambler reference, tell us about that lovely dress made of cards.
the infamous dress.
Yes.
It's so funny because I love that outfit. I never thought it would be as well received as it has been. Not that I didn't think people would like it, but people are crazy about it. And it literally just kind of came to me on a whim. I have two outfits that I'm actually probably most proud of. And it all started with, at Zarkana, we used to do, every year we would do a thing called Walk the Wardrobe. And basically it was an opportunity for our costume department and anybody else who wanted to design something to kind of put together a runway show. So we picked different categories, and it was always something kind of funky, nothing, no couture type situations, anything like that. It was always kind of a chance to let us express our artistic side. I think one of the categories the first year was recycled fashion. And the story of how I came up with this outfit is kind of funny because I'm obsessed with playing bingo, but as most people will tell you, I'm not fun to play bingo with because I get very angry.
Really?
I like it to be very quiet. I don't like when people talk during bingo. It's very weird, and I highly suggest that, that's, if you want to, casually hang out with me, bingo is not where that's at. Which is it makes me sound like a cranky 90-year-old woman. So we were sitting there playing bingo, and I had gotten my Corona with my little lime on a toothpick, and I sat there and I was like, oh, what am I going to do for this category, blah, blah, blah. And I looked and I was like, ooh, I should make it out of these little toothpicks. I'm going to make a dress out of little toothpicks. And that, sounded like a really good idea in the moment. And then when I thought about how many toothpicks I was going to need in order to make a dress, decided that was not really cost effective. So then the next best thing was, and another thing that makes me like a cranky old woman is I don't like to play with the electric bingo cards. I think that's cheating. I'm very old school. We go paper all the way. Uh-huh. And so I was sitting there looking at my bingo cards, and I was like, oh, my God, I should make an outfit out of bingo cards. Oh. That sounds ingenious. So I literally went by all the tables and collected as many bingo sheets as I could, which I'm sure looked crazy strange. Sure. Me walking out with a 5-inch stack of bingo cards.
Well, with your attitude, I don't think anyone's really going to challenge you.
I was just like, la, 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 don't let me put it in my purse. And so then I made this bingo outfit. It was like a little crop top and a little 70s kind of pant. And it was my favorite, one of the coolest things I did. And then a few years later, when we did Walk the Wardrobe again, we had this, we could do a collection of 5. And so I really loved doing the recycled goods. Something about taking an item that you would never have thought as a material and just making it into something is kind of something I find really interesting. Mm-hmm. And so I think my collection was, I did a bingo skirt. I had made a vintage style men's swimsuit, and I embellished it with bottle caps. Wow. And then, which the story of how I ended up with hundreds of bottle caps is another really funny story for another time.
Oh, okay. Well, is that your way of saying I want to come back on the show?
We'll do part 2 of the podcast.
Yes.
The extension. And then I did bottle caps, another bingo outfit. I did a flapper dress but made with necklaces. And then what was my other? I did 5. What was the other one I did? I don't know. Anyway, there's one more, and then I had I made a pair of overalls with men's ties. And then I did the card outfit, which is actually a corset and a skirt, And the corset was, I actually randomly had this corset in my closet. It had been given to me years ago, and I never wore it. And I said, okay, let's sew some cards on there. And so then the funny part of how I ended up with so many cards is my grandpa is a huge fan of going to casinos, but he's super friendly like me, and he always asks the dealers, or not the dealers, but the boss guy that's behind them, always asks them for the old cards, because what casinos do is that when they're done with the cards, they punch a hole in it, and then they either throw them out or I don't know, whatever else they do. But my grandpa always gets a box. And so for the longest time, he would send me these boxes, which have like 20 decks of cards in them. So in my possession, I had like 50 decks of cards. Like, what I was going to do with 50 decks of cards, I have no idea, which is kind of what I was like, oh, I should make something with cards. Let me get rid of this.
Right,
like,
yeah.
To clear out my trash. And so I went through and I took these cards and I stitched them onto the corset, kind of as just like a top layer kind of thing. And then for the skirt, I wanted to do something to kind of feature that they were playing cards. And so I made they call it a mermaid skirt. And I got about halfway through sewing the cards on the train when I sat and I was like, this was a huge mistake. What was I thinking?
Oh, no.
Oh, God. Because it was probably about 5 decks of cards worth. And I just sewed them row after row after row, just stitching them all onto the train of the skirt. And that was like my, I guess, piece de resistance or whatever they call it. Super fancy. And, but people love it. It's so crazy to me because I was like, oh, what a cool idea. And people are obsessed with it. It's not, I put it in the front window of the shop for so long and people would stop all the time and take pictures and
yeah,
it was crazy.
It's something obviously that's very unique, but what was it that you were unhappy with when you were sewing it?
It's just the difficulty of trying to fit this giant train of cards that don't, it's not a flexible, like cards are not a flexible thing.
Right, yeah.
And so when you're like 20 rows in and trying to shove this under a sewing machine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy difficult. And I know my mom and my sister came to town for that fashion show, and I remember them like watching me on that last day trying to just sew everything together. And I was like, what was I thinking? This was the worst idea.
Well, not only that, but I mean, just making sure that they're all evenly aligned so perfectly must have been a challenge. And obviously you're not working with material that's, being very friendly to you for putting it together.
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't decide on poker chips. Although,
right. Next time.
Well, I could probably be done, I would imagine, but I would think that would be incredibly heavy.
Yes, and actually that's what I ran into with the bottle caps, was that I was going to do the full swimsuit and bottle caps, but it was so heavy, and it just stretched out, and I only ended up doing like the top half of the front and the top half of the back, and it just stretched so bad, and I was like, well, never mind.
Now, have you ever actually worn the card dress?
I have not. I don't know if I could. I was like, I don't know if I made it for a size that I would fit.
Oh, yeah.
But I actually just recently lent it out for a photo shoot. There's a photographer that's based in the Arts District, and he had come by one day and was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, I'd love to do a shoot with it. Can I borrow it sometime? And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So he just recently did a photo shoot with it, which was really cool just to see it on a different person and to see it back in action. So
that's very cool. Yeah, when I first saw it, I was just kind of blown away because I'd never seen anything like it. It was incredibly unique, but it was also, it just looked impressive. It was very well done. And the kind of thing that you would look at, especially living in a town like Vegas, and go, I can't believe I've never seen this here before.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, and for me, just with people's response to it, it's actually kind of inspired me that I want to do more. Like, I want to create more card outfits. I've got a couple of ideas in the works in my head right now, so it's just finding the time to do it. It's such a, it's just so different, and I really do love a lot of what I do, I really like recycling things. Like, and not, I'm not to dog on people, but I'm not like a super crazy recycler, but I like looking at something going, that could be something else. Like, I can make that into something else. Or, I'll buy stuff in stores all the time. I'll be like, well, I don't like the sleeves on this, but if I put in a little panel here and then it'll look a little different, I have a little trim on the end. Like, I do that kind of stuff.
So you're a repurposer.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's a better word than recycle. I'm just so good with words today.
Doing great. Yeah,
right?
I definitely think about my carbon footprint a lot more than I used to. And obviously, most of the stuff that I do is digital, so I don't print a lot of sheet music. I can look at it on the computer on my second monitor instead. I really try to minimize how much I actually waste. And
yeah,
it's a tough thing, but I really like the idea, especially when it comes to like artists that reuse things. I see a lot of sculptors will do that. They'll use, material that they just find that was junk or, sitting around in a basement or a garage, and they'll find a way to put it into their art. I definitely love that.
Yeah.
I love that your grandfather was bold enough to ask the boss to just give him some cards. That's...
Oh my God, he does it all the time too. It's so funny. And they're cool with it. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if they do that in Vegas, but in
the shops, they sell their recycled cards. You can just go into like whatever hotel sundry shop, and they'll usually have 25 or 30 decks, and you can buy them. I think it was the first or second time I came to Vegas. I was staying at Treasure Island, and that was like my big souvenir, was getting a deck of actual Treasure Island cards. Ooh.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah, I went back home feeling so cool, But no, I love that. I'm definitely so glad that you came on the show. Thank you so much. And for those folks that live here in town, or if you're just visiting, take some time, go downtown. The Arts District is really cool just to even walk around. Like, there's just a lot of little cool shops and little very unique bars and restaurants that aren't the chains. There's stuff that, in fact, there's one up the street from you. You'll probably, Rebar, I think it is, where they have all kinds of just antiques and different things for sale. It's very interesting to just walk through there because you see all kinds of vintage stuff and you can make offers on it. They're all like really unique personal places, and it's nice to get away from the big chains and the corporate feel and really feel like the old family-owned business days. And go down, check out Pincushion, go take a class. I've been down to the shop. It's absolutely just a wonderful, warm environment, and you'll learn great stuff, and it's just a great place to be. So we'll post all the links in the show notes as to where you can find her on Instagram and all those good places, and then get on her email list because she sends out some cool stuff from time to time. I appreciate that you don't overload on the email.
I won't, and I'm probably the worst about sending the emails too, which reminds me I need to send one this week.
Well, that gives people a chance to get on the list first. See, I try to do one a month, and if I have like a major release coming out, I'll either time it to that release, or maybe I'll send a second email that month. But I really don't like to, bombard people. I've got companies that I've removed myself from their list because I'll get an email every day or every other day, and I'm just like, I buy from you like once or twice a year. I don't really need to know about everything you do,
Right, exactly.
Yeah, especially, I got, 270 some emails today just for Cyber Monday.
Oh my gosh, it's nuts. It's crazy. Well, and then now some companies too, they'll send you text messages too. If you subscribe to them via text, it's just all the things.
Yeah, well, the thing is now is that Black Friday actually started November 1st, at least in the music industry. And then it turns into extended Black Friday, which becomes Cyber Monday, which will become extended Cyber Monday. I mean, it's just a blur now. There's no point in naming it anything. It's just we have sales because the holidays are coming up. Let's just call it that.
Right, exactly. Right, Thanksgiving weekend sales. Like, that's what it should be.
Exactly, yeah. And stop beating people in the face because you want $10 off of a television set. Oh my gosh.
It's so funny, too, because now there were so many stores I noticed that opened Thanksgiving night. So I'm like, why is there even a reason to have the chaos on Black Friday? You could have gone the night before.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
People are crazy.
And to make people work, when they should be spending time with their families, because at least in America, even if you think it's a stupid holiday, a lot of people still, and I say that because it's predicated on just a ridiculous history.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But the fact is that people do spend time with their families, and to make them strip away from that so that people can be horrible to each other. It's not like you can't get great deals. You can still do doorbusters. There's so much more we can do than making people go through that. And but I've heard that the sales have actually declined, and I haven't heard from this year yet what Black Friday was. But every year it's been declining like 20 to 30% from the previous year, the amount of people that are going out Black Friday shopping. So I'm hoping that that's really a trend that just starts to just die off.
Yeah, kind of dissipates a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, with so many online stuff, and that was a lot of the companies that I saw, they actually offered like online Black Friday sales. So you didn't even have to go into the store.
Right.
Which I think, is still benefiting them, but at least it kind of cuts down on the chaos a little bit.
It does. And I think what happened was when Cyber Monday started, so Cyber Monday was the digital Black Friday. So you had the Black Friday was going to the stores and punching people in the face. And then when you could see again, you had Cyber Monday so that you could order stuff online. And I think the deals got so good with Cyber Monday that people started to realize they didn't need to go out and go through that chaos on Black Friday. And then the Black Friday people were like, well, now we've got to do something better to kind of counteract Cyber Monday. And the whole thing just got ridiculous. So basically everybody offers free shipping from like November 7th on through Christmas. And the whole thing just doesn't matter anymore. But yet there's still people that will go and fight for those deals.
Right, and lose their mind.
Yeah.
Yep, it's crazy.
I went out on one Black Friday, and it wasn't for anything major. It was just they were having a deal on something small. And I thought, well, it'd be good to stock up on those. And of course, I was maybe the 100th person in the door, and by the time I got to whatever it was I needed, they were already gone. I think it was like flash drives or something.
Oh, yeah.
I got stuck in Best Buy. Like, I couldn't get out.
Oh, it's so terrifying.
Well, they had kind of angled everything so that you had to walk a certain way through the store.
Yeah.
Very manipulative. And not only that, it was so crammed with people that you couldn't move forward no matter what.
Yep.
So I ended up flagging down an attendant, and he moved a television for me so that I could just get out. I'm like, this is stupid. You don't have what I need. I'm not buying anything. I don't want to spend the next 6 hours in here fighting with people.
Right.
He's like, oh yeah, just here. And he moved the set, and I got to leave. I'm like, yeah, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah. We used to camp out, but really just for the novelty of like camping out, because we were like, yeah. Because it was such an odd tradition. So what we would do is that we would go see a movie after Thanksgiving dinner, and then we would go camp out. And so it was just kind of fun, a little thing you did. It wasn't anything we really wanted from Best Buy.
Right.
Just wanted to say like, yeah, we camped out to go. And
you predicated it on having an experience.
Yeah, and that was the thing. But the year we stopped doing it, like I had like a full panic attack in the middle of Best Buy because I was so overwhelmed with people and the shuffling, and I just I lost it. I was like, wow. Had to go. So then we stopped doing it.
By the way, if Best Buy ever becomes a sponsor of this show, we love you.
Right.
But
right,
knock
exactly.
it off.
I go to Best Buy for everything.
Right, yeah.
Cloud is my hero.
That'll be the show when I have you back on.
Right.
Now, was this in Wichita that you did this?
Yes. Yep.
So it was freezing
back
cold.
Home. Oh yeah. I didn't say we were smart by any means.
Well, I mean, you were going in to buy an electric blanket.
Yeah, that was exactly it.
Well, thank you so much, Abby, for coming on the show. It's always just a joy to talk to you, and I'm so excited. I'm so impressed with, leaving a solid paying job with a big show, which is kind of everybody's dream if you're in an industry, is to get on a big permanent show and have a steady income, and to say, okay, I've done this and I'm going to go on my own and branch out. That really takes a lot of I don't even know, stamina, strength, belief. There's so many adjectives that come to mind that I probably can't pronounce today. And
Right.
I really admire people that are willing to take the risk and are willing to do it to follow what they feel is the right thing for them. So huge kudos for that. And I'm glad to see that the store is doing well, that people are really gaining a lot from you being there. And I love that it's growing and getting to be a bigger thing. So congratulations.
Thank you. It's definitely a lot of it comes from just an undying support from friends and family, which I couldn't be more thankful for than just having this support team that's behind me all the time. It's incredible.
And of course, our friends at Best Buy, where we've now probably been banned.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And after this ad for Best Buy.
Right. Well, keep doing what you're doing. I'll get all the links and everything in the show notes so people can find you and hopefully they'll come visit your store, or at least when they come to town they'll come and visit, maybe take a class, and it's just going to get better from here. So keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm so excited.
Excellent. Well, take care, Abby.
You too.
Bye-bye. See, how could you not just want to hug this girl? I mean, she is just so bubbly and warm and friendly and just a joy to be around. Thank you, Abby, for coming on the show. For those of you that are listening or about to stop listening because it's almost over, please leave a star rating, some feedback, or a review of the show on iTunes. I think you can also do it on Spotify. I'm not sure, but please do that when you have a moment. It just takes a couple seconds and it helps us out. There's also a donate button on my website if you would like to send a little money your way to the podcast so that we can keep doing this. Thank you guys and have a great week. Tune in for that episode on Saturday.